You're listening to The Blockchain Show. This episode of The Blockchain Show is brought to you by Axel, IPFS. Axel is returning trust to the internet by returning control of data to the user. For more information about Axel, visit www.axel.network/IPFS. The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Blockchain Show. We've got a special guest today. It's Kevin Wang from Nervos. Kevin, welcome to The Blockchain Show.
Hey, Ethan. Good to be here.
Yeah, man. I appreciate your time hanging out with us today. I know we're going to jump into what you're working on at Nervos, but I wanted you to have the opportunity to introduce yourself for the first time to our audience.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Wang, and one of the co-founders of Nervos. And so before Nervos, I was a startup founder, was working on the online education company. And then, I've been a crypto enthusiast for a long time. Started with Bitcoin around 2013, 2014 time. And then, really got hooked at Bitcoin and sort of look into the technology side and, the potential, how they can transform society and then Ethereum. So sort of started Nervos with through my friends in the beginning of 2018, last year. And it's been a very exciting journey since.
Yeah, that's awesome. I kind of got into this space around the same time. That was, as you did, that was very exciting, following Bitcoin and watching Ethereum develop. What are, talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're probably the most well-known. Looking back and maybe even looking forward, what are some of the challenges the first-gen blockchains like those two? What are we seeing happen with those, and what do you envision might it take to kind of help balance security, speed, scalability, that sort of thing?
So the, Bitcoin and Ethereum, the way we look at it is there are two main challenges. One is scalability. I think that's what a lot of people talk about. And, both Bitcoin and Ethereum, they don't particularly scale very well, have limited transaction per second. The other one that we kind of focus on and not many people realize is the economic model sustainability, right? And both Bitcoin and Ethereum has issues in terms of, long-term sustainability of their economic model. For Bitcoin, it's more around, there is a hard cap, and then what happens when the hard cap is reached, or in fact, it doesn't have to be reached, right? So what happens after? In particular, what happens after the block reward drops to about the same level as transaction fees? And then there's some, there is some really issues there, but I think we still have to wait maybe around a decade to see that happen. So it tends to not be on people's radar. And on Ethereum, it's similar. The way we look at it is for any multi-asset platforms, including Ethereum, including Nervos, the economic model have to be designed as a store of value. And, again, I'm happy to jump into those. But those are, I would say scalability and then economic model sustainability are the two main things that we see. So for Nervos, we are designed more along the Bitcoin philosophy, if you will. So the base layer, we're not pursuing very, very large transaction per second. The base layer uses POW, and then with the economic model designed to be more of a store of value, but for multiple assets. And then scaling wise, we're going to use layer 2, right? So just like the Bitcoin and Lightning Network, where you have layer 1 focus on store of value, and then layer 2 focus on scaling. Similar philosophy for Nervos. Layer 1 focus on store of value, but with its smart contract capabilities. And then layer 2 focus on scaling.
To expand on the whole layer concept, how does that work with your wallet?
It's the same as Bitcoin, right? So it can be abstracted away with wallets. Some of the Bitcoin some of the wallets I use, for example, allow you to click a button and then right away you're just moving transaction to layer 2 to Lightning. So it's pretty convenient. I expect the same to happen on Nervos as well.
Oh yeah, that's just really cool, man. You've been called the biggest Ethereum wallet in the world. Is that true?
Yeah. So one of our co-founders built. Daniel was the CTO of mToken. So yeah. So I mean, our team actually built quite a bit of different types of projects in the crypto space. Like I said, Daniel helped build the mToken, largest Ethereum wallet. We built Huobi, which used to be the largest exchange by volume for a short period of time, but before it was shut down by the Chinese government. And we also helped build Spark Pool, which is I think right now the largest Ethereum mining pool. We built community. We built the largest community Ethereum community in China. And we also built one of the leading permissioned blockchains. So think Hyperledger, right? But it's more high performance than Hyperledger, called Theta. So yeah, so really just in the co-founders level, this is not our first project. We have built many different types of projects in this space in the past. And also Jian used to work for Ethereum Foundation, and he was a core developer for Ethereum, used to work for Vitalik directly, on sharding and Casper. So yeah, so we kind of, look at, use all that we learned for the past several years and then, put it into Nervos, the new blockchain that we're building. We're launching by the end of this year. So it's pretty exciting for us.
Cool, man. Just to back up a little bit, I see that you got some folks from IBM. You mentioned Ethereum, mToken. How did you guys meet, and what was kind of the original, idea or vision behind Nervos? Just to get a little background.
Yeah, so we've known each other for a long time. Again, this is we're kind of like the OG folks for the crypto circle in China. So we've known each other for quite a long time. And then, we kept in touch and talk about stuff that we want to do, and then sort of went off to do different things, and then sort of come back and wanted to do this. I think, again, the idea behind Nervos, a lot of it came from Jan, one of our co-founders' experience with Ethereum. Him as a core developer Ethereum and researcher there. So sort of got a front row view of the inside, technical parts of Ethereum, and then he had his thoughts on what would be the best way to solve some of the issues in the beginning. And in particular, we look at Bitcoin as the store of value, or believe that's the store of value. Bitcoin only stores one type of value, which is, as money, right? So in other words, store monetary value. Ethereum and other platform can support other assets, but the economic model is not designed as a store of value. So there's definitely, the way we look at the future of blockchain, it's going to be mostly a value infrastructure, right? A value network or value infrastructure. And for that type of infrastructure, the first demand of users is to that, my value, whatever that's, my assets have to be secure over time, have to be safe. That type of blockchain just didn't exist before. And then, that's basically what we're building.
Yeah, it's great, man. A lot of people, I imagine, listening only can conceptualize the store of value being money. But what are some other store of values that we see even today being used on some of these other blockchains?
For Bitcoin, there's only one asset, right, which is BTC. And then BTC is used or believed as a digital gold. And then, that's very, very strong monetary properties. But for all other platforms, they can support many different type of assets, both in terms of digital native assets. In other words, these are tokens that exist only on blockchain. There's no real world representation of them. So like all the tokens, either fungible or non-fungible tokens, they can, they are basically digital native assets, right? And then you also have sort of tokens that can represent claims to real world assets. So this is things like security tokens or real world assets that can be mapped to the blockchain, right? So all these can represent assets sitting on the blockchain. So, a store of value for non-monetary value basically means the platform has to supply security and protect all these different type of assets. Not only its native token, but all the assets riding on top of it.
Awesome. And just to go back to the layer design, so layer 1 is for security. What efforts are you putting towards security that maybe are kind of new, and what are some of the pitfalls of other blockchains that helped you come to that realization?
Yeah. So again, I will go like two directions on this, right? So one is the tendency of blockchains to go towards more centralization tendency. Right. So, for example, in the Bitcoin space, I think this is probably a lot of your listeners are familiar with. There's this small block and big block debate, and now they're not debating anymore, but they're on separate paths. So when you making the blocks bigger, that means it takes more professional infrastructure to run those, right? That put more requirement on, things like bandwidth, things like on computation, and these are smart contract platforms. And then, storage to store the chain, to store the data. The bigger the block is, the faster the storage requirement for the blockchain will grow. And so pretty quickly, you can't run nodes on home computers, and then it will have to be professional service providers that can run nodes, and then everybody else just kind of do queries for these professional providers. And that's a problem because the value proposition of blockchain technology or everything decentralized is that you can independently run those. And if you can't, you're kind of relying on somebody else to tell you what balance this address has, whether a transaction has gone through or not, and then what's the current world state. And that kind of in our opinion, that kind of goes against the whole, the reason why we're working on this, right? So we're going back to these monopolized service providers that can, fabricate history and then tell you whatever that they wish. And then, also for miners, right? So if there are abundance of full nodes, then they can hold miners responsible, accountable, right? If they, if by refusing to route the invalid transactions to them. And if there's really no full node or disappearing full nodes, then that could be an issue. So for all these reasons, right? So we want to make sure the expense, the cost for full node operation is limited. And the protocol, there are some measurement to counter the ever-growing cost of running full nodes. Because then, sooner or later, only professionals can run it, and then power will be centralized. So this is sort of the stand of the small blockers, right? So people don't want to, go to very, very large blocks. Like the other camp would be, it's okay to have big blocks. It's okay to have professional operators, and then we're trusting them anyway. Full nodes don't add much value to the blockchain. So these are the, folks on the other side, like BCH or BSV, and that don't mind bigger and bigger blocks. So yeah, so on the smart contract side, you have the same tendency, right? So whether you only want supercomputers to run validation and participate in the consensus process, these are the projects like EOS or pretty much all TPOS systems, or do you want to keep it more open participation, neutral, sort of censorship resistance, borderless? You want to optimize for those properties, right? And then, we're definitely on this side. So Nervos, for example, takes a no compromise approach in all of the properties I mentioned above, because we believe that's the reason we do blockchain in the first place. So if we do that, then, you kind of sacrifice on scalability, and this is why we go on layer 2. So this is one aspect, right? So how Nervos was born. The other aspect is really the economic model that I mentioned before. Bitcoin has a pretty good economic model, but the problem is that what if the issuance stops, right? So as long as there is issuance, there is block reward in issuance, then the income of the miners as a whole can scale to the value of the Bitcoin that they secure, right? So, if we run through a thought experiment, right? So if Bitcoin miners collectively, they don't, the blocks don't have BTC as reward, but has, some sort of stable coin like US dollars as block reward. If that happens, that economic model won't work, because Bitcoin can appreciate 10 times, but the miner income will stay the same in US dollar terms. And then that, you're just inviting a tax, right? Because the defense does not go up, but the reward or the bounty goes up 10 times. So people will just more likely to attack. So this is why, for Bitcoin, it has to use its own native currency as the block reward to incentivize miners, right? To incentivize sort of people to protect the network, right? Or the military, if you will. But when this stops, when there's no block reward anymore, then this dynamic kind of breaks down, because miners' income will entirely depend on not fixed BTC per block, but a huge variance of transaction fees, right? So that, whether that can still private the same property, it will largely depend on whether the demand of transaction can always keep up, or the block space can always be filled up, and also the demand of transaction can somewhat scale to the price of the Bitcoin. So those are very, very strong assumptions. And then I think some of the folks might already hear discussions in the Bitcoin community, and with credible people, right, flowing the idea of, hey, should we remove the hard cap? So this is the whole context behind that. Why this is being discussed at all, because otherwise you would think nobody has really incentive to propose this, right? Anyway, so this is for Bitcoin. And for Ethereum or smart contract platforms, it's kind of similar, right? So again, going back to the Bitcoin miner compensation example, for Ethereum miners, they are compensated with a cryptocurrency, Ether, which is really not correlated with, the value of all the assets riding on top of it, right? So it's as if you're protecting all these type of tokens that's riding on Ethereum, but you're paid with a cryptocurrency, fixed amount of cryptocurrency, 3 Ethers, 2 Ethers per block. That may not scale to the value of the assets riding on top of it, right? So it's like Bitcoin miners paid by USD, or Bitcoin miners paid by Ether, or something like that. There's very weak correlation between their income versus what they have to protect, and then that has the same, potential attack problem. So it's not, in other words, it's not designed as store of value. It's designed as a decentralized computation platform, because in there, right, the limited resource is computation resource. So Ether is used to pay for that, to auction basically computation power of the network. So it's designed for different purposes, I would say.
Wow, thank you for that. Excuse me. Andreas Antonopoulos did a talk a number of months ago about unstoppable code. And when you were speaking about, different governments, I'm curious, what can governments do to kind of prevent what you're trying to accomplish, and what can you do to kind of, get around any regulatory problems they might throw at you?
Yeah, I mean, government can do many things, right? Many sort of things. So obviously, governments always have an urge to censor the blockchain. If they see something they don't like, then they don't want it to be there. They probably want to control where money flows, and it's also kind of sort of censorship as well. They always want to regulate the blockchain. So there will be, so to be very clear, right? So there will be regulatory friendly blockchains, and then there are going to be, there's going to be value they provide to the society as well, and there is room for them to to exist. We're not opposing it. I think it will, bring maybe more efficiency in certain use cases. But that's not the reason we built this, right? To build our blockchain. And, we believe that, for Nervos, for example, it wants to be this infrastructure level, for the world. So just protocol wise, it's designed just like share the property to the internet itself, that we want it to be, open, neutral, borderless, public, and then permissionless. Anybody can participate, facilitate freedom, and then, property right. People can own things there independently, censorship resistance, right? And, so obviously government will want to, interfere with it, but this is where decentralization really helps, right? So, there's really no one company or organization or, something they can send a court order or developed by developers around the world. And then operational wise, there's no data center they can, cut the power, and then this thing will just break down, right? It's, there are going to be thousands of tens of thousands, if not more, full nodes that collectively support the network, and so on. So yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Andreas as well. So just as he said, I mean, it's unstoppable, and it's going to be always on, unstoppable, and clear of government interferences.
Yeah, that's really, really key, man.
This episode of The Blockchain Show is brought to you by Axel, IPFS. Axel is committed to data privacy and protection. For more information about Axel, visit www.axel.network/IPFS.
I got into a discussion with a friend a few months ago. I haven't released it on the podcast because I didn't know if I was wrong. The question was, can a central authority effectively censor a blockchain? And I know you had mentioned that earlier, and I'm not sure if you meant actually censoring, scrubbing something from a record or not, but maybe you can help me out with this. Is it possible for someone or some entity to gain control of, one of these blockchains? Maybe, I don't know how they would do it. Maybe fork the software, get everyone on a new fork of that blockchain, and then edit these different, I don't know, I guess transactions. But then his question was, well, what if somebody has a computer that was turned off and they just plug it in? Wouldn't that just automatically update the blockchain? And that's kind of where the conversation ended, because I thought, yeah, I don't really know how anybody could effectively censor a blockchain. I mean, is that even possible?
So I think you outlined 3 steps, right, for government to censor the blockchain. The first step is fork the blockchain. I think they can totally do that. And in fact, everybody can do it. So that's not requires special power. The second one is actually the most difficult part, right? Get everybody to it, get everybody on the new fork, on their fork. That's very, very difficult to do. And, because again, users of the blockchain they don't need permission. And then, they're also sort of pseudo anonymous. It's not like they knock on the door of everybody and then say, hey, now open your computer and then change your configurations. Now you have to be on this chain. Otherwise I'll monitor. Otherwise something happens, right? The moment that, it's a government fork, then at least, for a network like a Bitcoin and Nervos, people are very much, they know the reason why they use the blockchain, this piece of infrastructure in the first place. People will just abandon that fork. Nobody will be on those forks. Now, if you think about blockchain itself as a, replicated databases, they are actually append-only replicated databases, right? So in other words, existing, the history has already been most likely carved in stone. You can't go back and change the history. You have very, very limited capabilities to do that. What you can do is if you want to modify the records, right? So you have to write transactions into the blockchain. If you want to change the history, you have to acquire the necessary hash power, right? To, like, just use the Bitcoin example, right? So you have to have more hash power than the entire network and the current network put all together, so that, then you can somewhat, go from Genesis, and then you can move faster than everybody else. And then you can write the entire different history. And that, theoretically that's possible, but that really requires government to get their hands on that much hash power. And I know some people say, well, they have unlimited, money, and then they can probably do that. But the issue is, again, just use Bitcoin example, right? So the capacity of the all Bitcoin hash power is limited, right? So you can't just say, I'm going to double or triple Bitcoin's hash power. If I'm a government, I just throw money at manufacturers or stuff like that, and then they have to turn out miners for me. Because there's a cap of the global supply, how many miners can be produced, essentially, or ASICs. It's even you throw money, there's only production capacity. You probably have to take much, much longer to, build more factories, fabs, and the entire supply chain, basically. And only do this in somewhat secrecy so that nobody will know, because the moment they will know, people will just do things to protect the blockchain. Things like, hey, one possibility would be we're going to use different proof of work algorithm so that the investments you try to attack the blockchain will just be all wasted. So I would say it's not as easy as people think for governments to attack the blockchain, but it remains a theoretical possibility.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. Thank you. Let's get the audience kind of oriented to where Nervos is on the internet, and where can folks go to support you, and what's the next steps of what you're trying to accomplish? Your listeners can find about Nervos on our website. It's NERVOS, so NERVOS.org. So they can learn more about the project. We have Telegram groups, and we have, for different languages as well as for developers and so on. So they're very easy to find. If you just Google, Nervos Telegram channel, or you can go to Telegram and Google for us. And so that would be a good entry point. And then from there, they can find more specialized Telegram groups. Awesome, man. And I know that you were doing the testnet thing, and did you say at the end of this year you were going to go live? Yeah, so we're currently doing testnet, and so while doing testnet, we're also having sort of mining competitions. So the idea is we invite people to work with the blockchain, run nodes, and then help us basically to test the protocol. And as reward, they will also receive testnet tokens, right, from mining. But there's some regulatory sort of particulars about how to participate and who's eligible, but those can be
converted to mainnet tokens for some ratio. So that's mining competition, and it's been running pretty well, I would say. And people help us to discover some bugs that we're fixing. So so the mainnet will launch by the end of this year.
That's great. So I live in the Los Angeles area, and it's been maybe 3 years, we're going on 4 years doing this podcast, and I've noticed people seem to be becoming a little bit more aware of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, starting to see some billboards, buses, ads on the buses. How are you attracting people? Like, how do we get, it seems like maybe people don't really care, or maybe they just don't understand how important all this is going to be, because you termed it the decentralized economy. I really like that. I guess my question is what are some of your efforts other than podcasting to attract awareness to what you're doing?
So obviously, we're doing this podcast, but otherwise, I think I would say there's still a core of crypto, enthusiasts and supporters that are very still active, and then looking to support projects. So in that circle, we definitely we go to conferences and meetups a lot just to meet people in person, go to different parts of the world, and then learn the different dynamics of different in different countries and communities. And we work we work with partners, so which are, they could be wallets, they could be other sort of crypto infrastructure that again, in different countries, introduce the technology to their communities as well. But in terms of ads on buzz and billboard and all that, I think like you said, I think you're right. I mean, the regular sort of non-crypto outside our little bubble, right? Most people don't know about what we're even talking about. And then I think some people may be aware of Bitcoin, and that would be the most that we can expect, the mainstream users, the mainstream folks. So it's just another way to say that we're very early in this revolution. And just like, I remember just watching some, talk shows in the early days of the internet, when people invite, technologists and explain what internet is or what email is. And people just keep asking, is this radio? Some special type of radio? Like, oh, this is like television, but something, right? So it's like that today. I think we still have to explain the fundamentals of what this technology is, what it can do, but that's okay. I mean, this is what every technology has to go through. So yeah, the what's in the advantage of blockchain tech or crypto in general is that we tend to go through these hype cycles, and being somebody kind of early in the Bitcoin space, and I know you too. We already observed quite a few of these cycles. Bitcoin got all of a sudden very hot, and then it got a bear market, and nobody wants to talk about it anymore, and then all of a sudden it got hot again. So with every of these hype cycles, I think it attracts new users. People learn about Bitcoin and blockchain technologies, what it can do. I think the same with Ethereum as well, right? When ICO was there, then everybody started to learn about, oh, this is what a smart contract platform like Ethereum can accomplish. And so that attracts a lot of people. Obviously, people were already enthusiastic, and now a lot of people are. You don't hear this, as much, but I think this hype cycle will continue just because, it introduced this market mechanism dynamic, unlike your Silicon Valley startups that don't have access to capital and to the mass market. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but I think we'll keep going through these hype cycles, and every time got people interested in this tech, and they will learn more about it. And so hopefully we'll see more applications running on top of this. and more, better user experience and everything. I think that will probably be the path of adoption.
Yeah, no, it's very well said. I'm probably going to butcher this, but I saw that you've got some partnerships. How would you say that? Is it Huobi?
Yeah, Huobi.
And you're going to build a joint DeFi chain. Could you just briefly tell us about that, please?
Yeah. So remember, early we talked about sort of this permissionless public infrastructure versus regulatory friendly blockchain, which is serve a different type of market, can have different type of assets running on top of it. So this Huobi partnership, what we're going to build is a regulatory friendly sort of. You can think about it as another blockchain that can be loosely associated with the common knowledge base, what we're building. So what this brings is the ability to bring real world assets, onboarding real world assets, right? Because it is more regulatory friendly. And so Huobi is one of the leading crypto exchange in the world. And then they obviously are very sort of deep in the space, and they themselves have a lot of users and assets. And then they will push to this new blockchain. So think about this as a Binance chain, but then like much richer functionality and a more regulatory friendly. So the vision that we have is we want this to serve as the gateway where real world assets can flow onto the blockchain space. And then from there, right, because it's connected to the common knowledge base, what we're building as well, then they will also flow into our platform. And then, as more sort of real world value, migrate to blockchains, and then, eventually, secured by common knowledge base, then, it will be a richer ecosystem. And then, even it is, connected to, real world assets like security tokens, but then, people can still provide, permissionless service or add-ons, right? Value add to these securities. So that, there's still like grassroots and bottom-up innovation that we can do for these real world assets. So that's the idea.
Cool, man. Other than that, I'm not sure if we talked about your public tokens sale. We talked about the mainnet launch, but who's the target audience for the token, and why should they buy?
The public sale is next month, and then it will be on CoinList. So we pick the platform because it tends to be they have the most, they have the best due diligence process, and then can really do the right thing. For regulatory reasons, we have to exclude, certain countries. But, we expect to be on exchanges, to be listed on exchanges, sometime after the public sale as well. I mean, we kind of overheard, the conversations already from exchanges, but so that people can still participate. So who would want to? I mean, I think people have to really understand our token economics to know, what when they buy our tokens, for example, what they're purchasing, and so purchasing our tokens really amounts to acquiring a piece of the blockchain, right? So it's our native token is the common knowledge bytes. So when you hold our native tokens, you basically hold, a part of the blockchain, the state storage to be more particular, right? Then that gives you the right or the capability to store valuable states or assets onto the blockchain. So back to the early conversation about how the native token has to be able to capture ecosystem value. And then, we probably don't have time to walk through this in detail today, but if folks are interested, they can check out our website and our economic paper. We talk about this in pretty much very much detail. But that's basically what they're acquiring. They're acquiring this digital land, if you will. You think about Bitcoin, digital gold, right? So we're this digital land in limited supply with all the tokenomics designed to be a store of value as well, decentralized. Land in real world is always subject to government control, right? But so with the space that you have, you can store, the users can store valuable assets and then make it sustainable.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, this has been a really good talk. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Can you remind us one more time your website?
Yeah, it's nervos.org, nervos.org.
Great. Yeah, and I encourage everybody to go there to learn more. And hopefully we can have you back on in the future and maybe do
awesome.
A little more deep diving. I'll try to get my co-host on. He's a little bit more technical. So maybe you guys could dig deeper. Yeah, man.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for taking the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good talking to you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Talk to you. Bye.
Okay. Goodbye. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. Our guest today was Kevin Wang from Nervos. And thank you very much to him for taking the time, and to Mark and Patrice for helping set that interview up.
This episode of The Blockchain Show is brought to you by Axel, IPFS. Axel is committed to data privacy and protection. For more information about Axel, visit www.axel.network/IPFS.